Hi guys! Today I'm going to do a first impressions video, and that is on the new Channel 4 sci-fi series Humans. Now I'm a little bit late on this for a first impressions video because my plan had been to film this last week and I actually didn't get around to watching the first episode until yesterday, which was the same day that the second episode aired. So I've now seen the first 2 episodes, but hey ho, that just means that I've got more information to give you on how I have reacted to it so far. So before the show even began, I had been hearing a lot of people being very excited about it. I'd seen a lot of trailers and posters and everything. It was getting hyped up quite a lot. The show is actually based on a Swedish series which was called Real Humans. It's in the sort of sci-fi genre and it's dealing with a parallel present. So it's set in our time but in a parallel universe where humans have managed to develop robot slash synth slash humanoid versions of humans. So just like you'll have a television in your house or a fridge in your house or a Hoover in your house, a lot of people in this parallel universe have synths living in their houses to help them with the cleaning and the cooking and looking after their kids. And the show is really looking at the problematic aspects of that kind of blurring boundary between humans and machines. The show opens and we are introduced to the Hawkins family. So within the first episode, the Hawkins family acquire a synth. Husband Joe has decided that it is time that they get one. The one small issue that I have with this show, and this is a very small negative thing because actually I'm going to rave about this because I think it's excellent. The one thing that I'm not quite as keen on, but unfortunately it's something that we see very, very frequently, is that the mum in the family, her name is Laura and she's played by Catherine Parkinson, who you might know as Jen from the IT Crowd and various other roles. But the one thing that I kind of find slightly irritating is that she is portrayed as this very busy career woman. She has a very busy job and she's away from home quite a lot, and therefore she has a terribly difficult relationship with her teenage daughter who hates her because she's never at home and whatever. And it feels like one of those very stereotypical things that they do where it's, oh, but you can't be a good mum and a busy career woman at the same time. You know, it just feels like one of those very old stereotypes. So that's bothered me ever so slightly, but I have to say that's probably the only thing about this show that I have disliked so far. So slight stereotyping aside, the Hawkins family get this robot because basically Laura's so busy at work and her husband thinks that they could really be doing with an extra pair of hands around the house. When he goes to purchase the synth, they are given Anita. She doesn't have a name to begin with, but their youngest daughter picks a name for her. What's quite interesting though is that as well as being developed just to be purchased to use around the house for anybody, they are also used for medical reasons, so people who have health conditions or older people who need help, they are given this robot to help them around the house. In that way, it kind of reminded me, in a slightly different way, but the movie Robot and Frank. If anyone's seen that, it's such a good film. If you haven't, go and look for it. It's really, really excellent. So on a surface level, it looks like these synths being brought into people's homes is a good thing. But when you start to dig a little deeper, you start to see the blurring of these kind of human-robot boundaries and what is appropriate and how heavily people begin to rely on having a robot around, how it starts to complicate human relationships. You'll start to see some jealousy within certain relationships of maybe partners being jealous of their spouse's relationship with the robot that they have in the house, or children forming attachments to the synths that their parents aren't comfortable with. So at a very base level, these robots have all been programmed in exactly the same way. They are able to do incredible things like cook and clean and iron and all these kind of things. They have set language so they can communicate verbally with you, but obviously within certain limits. There's questions that they don't understand how to answer. But the really interesting thing about this show is the idea that some of these synths have been modified so they can begin to have their own conscious thoughts. So that then starts to look into the idea of what happens if we develop these technologies to help us, but then they begin to surpass us. What does that mean for human life? There are certain characters in the show who are extremely opposed to the idea of robots. They feel that they are making humans obsolete. It's actually really interesting because it is a question that we are asking a lot in our society at the moment, is the more technology develops, the less we really need to do. So is that actually a good thing? So the idea that these robots could be programmed and developed and messed with to the extent that they could actually begin to have their own personalities, their own conscious thoughts, and live their own individual lives begins to really disrupt the idea that these are simply technological machines built for the purpose of helping us as humans. I've loved this show so far. I really, really have. Honestly, it's one of the best first episodes of things that I've watched for quite a while. It seems to have had a really brilliant reception so far. I just read an article there on The Guardian that said that the first episode actually attracted over 6 million viewers and a 23% share of the audience for Channel 4, which means that the show is actually the most successful original broadcast that they've put out since Chamomile Lawn, which was a show that came out over 20 years ago. So It is doing pretty well so far. Most of the reviews that I have read have been extremely positive. There have been a few that have been less so, but that just comes with the territory. But for me anyway, I am absolutely loving it so far. Generally, I'm not actually a massive sci-fi fan. I have quite specific rules and regulations for my engagement with sci-fi programming. I like things like Orphan Black and this show, which is set in the present. I'm not massively keen on like hugely futuristic things, so if it is something sci-fi, I like it to be in the present day sci-fi, and so this fits the bill for me. The few negative reviews or sort of less positive reviews that I have read have been from people who are hugely into sci-fi, and so they found it a little bit old hat. But for me, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I like the story. I think the acting's been really strong so far, and I think the characters are really interesting. Anita, who is the synth who's purchased by the Hawkins family, she's played by Gemma Chan, and I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff to come with her, and so yeah, I have a lot of positive feelings about this show. If you've watched it so far, let me know in the comments down below what you've thought of it, or if you go and watch it now following this little first impressions video, do come back and leave me a comment or send me a tweet at LynseyMac1 to let me know if you enjoyed it. That's all for today. I really hope that you have enjoyed that. Let me know, as I say, in the comments what you thought of the show if you've watched it, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye! Now obviously from, you know, a film executive producer sort of point of view, financially it makes sense because these films, when you get people